Hello, nerds! Thank you for watching Generally Nerdy. This is the weekly in Nerdom, your source for weekly nerd news update videos every day. And today, being Wednesday, we're talking movie news this week. And there's actually a whole bunch of movie news. I'm not going to bother you with the intro. We're just going to hit it and then get to the conversation. First, I feel like possibly one of the biggest updates this week is the fact that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles live-action series is getting rebooted again. 2 movies in, because the last one sucked worse than... Well, not worse. Different. It sucked differently from the first one. So, according to THR... the producers over at Platinum Dunes, who are the production company for the movies, are rebooting again. Partially has something to do with there's a new head of production who wants to clean house. Partially just because the last 2 movies did not gross what they should have in order to justify keeping them around. Though they understand that what they have, the IP that they have, is popular enough that it can make them some money. They just have to do it right. So they've brought in, I gotta read his name, Andrew Dodge, who previously wrote a Jason Bateman movie called Bad Words, which I haven't seen, so I can't judge. But it's a comedy. So again, we're talking comedy writers. We've talked about this a couple of times before. Comedy writers writing comic book movies. Maybe? I don't know that we've ever seen that work out super well, but I can't think of the writing staff for a lot of movies off the top of my head, so I'd have to do a little bit more research to back that up. But he's been brought in to write the script, and they're apparently going into production this year on the next movie. So it'll be the first movie in the new series. Oh, whatever. We're moving on. Next, we're talking about Blue Beetle, and the first half of this update is a little older than I thought it was, because apparently it's a lot more widely known that Blue Beetle is going to be the next live-action DC movie that they're trying to get made. They have brought in Gareth Dunnett Alcocer. That's a very interesting name that I'm not pronouncing correctly. Who also wrote Scarface, Universal's Scarface, so I don't think that's the original Scarface. I feel like that guy might be dead. But he's been brought in to write the script, so it's also been greenlit and put in motion. But so that's the oldish bit of news. The more recent bit of news comes from Geeks Worldwide, and they're reporting from their close, trusty sources that Booster Gold is going to at least be a small part in the story. If it remains small is yet to be seen, because the script hasn't been approved or finished as far as we know yet either. So definitely going to be keeping our ears open. Blue Beetle is one of my favorite B-list DC characters. He's one of my favorite to play in Injustice, so why wouldn't he be one of my DC guys? So yeah, that's really potentially awesome. And they're definitely going with the new 52 version with Jaime, not the original Blue Beetle that they bought from. If you don't know the history of the Blue Beetle character, Wikipedia that, because it's very interesting. So we're going to be definitely keeping you guys updated on this as more things come out. Our next bit of news also has an element that's a little bit older, in that we got a Ghostbusters teaser last week, and that's one of the coolest 51 seconds of my life. Just they're complete, from the looks of it, this has not been confirmed, but it looks like they're basically just going to completely ignore the Ghostbusters movie that came out 2 years ago that was like Kristen Wiig and so on and so forth, because that actually makes a whole lot of sense. Even though they wanted to make it look like everybody loved that movie, not a lot of people actually liked that movie. It was pretty garbage, and it played into some really trash stereotypes that really haven't been around in movies for a decade at least. More likely 2 to 3 decades. So, yeah, just completely ignoring the all-female Ghostbusters and bringing back the surviving original cast of the first 2 movies. Because Harold Ramis is passed, he's not going to be in the movie. But everybody else is on board to come back. Murray, Akroyd, and Ernie Hudson all have signed on to come back. And the new bit of news for this is that there's going to be an introduction, a proper passing of the torch, if you will, to a new set of ghost hunters, effectively. It's going to be, the younger cast is going to be evenly split between the genders. It's going to be two guys and 2 women, 2 females that are going to be taking over, which means very potentially that we're going to see more movies with this cast. Probably not the original cast beyond this, but still in that same canon, so that kind of same quality in an ideal world. Next up, we're talking about New Gods. Ava DuVernay, we already know, is in charge of this New Gods movie, and so far it's been held pretty close to the chest, a lot of tight lips going on, but we did potentially get something of a leak giving us a look inside of what potentially will become the New Gods movie. What we've got is, We Got This Covered, is reporting that the movie is going to focus mainly on Mr. Miracle and Big Barda trying to escape from Apokolips, which also could be a better way of introducing the general populace to Darkseid, much like the Blue Beetle movie might be trying to introduce the general populace to Booster Gold. Similar things could be going on here, which is laying groundwork for future movies, which kind of, again, makes a whole lot of freaking sense, and this is a better way to do it than what they were trying to do 3-4 years ago. So, yeah, pretty excited about that. And then our last bit comes from Geeks Worldwide. It seems that their sources are saying that Warner Brothers DC unit is going to make a Harley Quinn trilogy, starting with Birds of Prey, and then the rumor goes, we're going to be seeing a Gotham Sirens movie, which was rumored to be happening last year. And then the third movie is going to be Birds of Prey versus the Gotham Sirens, and this is not, I feel like, something a lot of the fans, or any of the fans really, are asking for. Because Harley Quinn is not that... Oh, okay. I'm over it. Everybody knows how I feel about Harley Quinn. Just weird. This is not a direction I feel like is going to pay off for DCEU in the near future, or ever. But that's what we got for news this week. Now we got to move into the reviews, and we're doing 2 movies this week for reviews because they're both going to be pretty quick. Before we jump into the reviews this week, guys, let me remind you about the Patreon. Patreon.com/generallynerdy for more content, monthly discords, contributor and producer credits, and much more, depending on the tier to which you subscribe. Again, Patreon.com/generallynerdy, because I'm too poor and don't have a staff to do a paywall myself. Patreon.com/generallynerdy. And now let's review some stuff. First on the list is The Little Stranger. This one was a little difficult to get my hands on, so if you have seen it and are trying to get your hands on it, I can probably save you a couple of bucks. And if you don't know, this movie stars Domhnall Gleeson and Will Poulter. Domhnall Gleeson you'll know from the new Star Wars trilogy, and Will Poulter you'll know as the guy who almost was Pennywise, but backed out and is now in Bandersnatch. He's the other game developer with the bleach blonde hair. That guy. They're both in this movie, and they're both good actors. Like, I really, really, really like Domhnall Gleeson. Will Poulter, from the bits that I've seen of him, I enjoy his performances as well. He's also in the Maze Runner movies, I believe. So, like, this is probably his most... I don't know, Bandersnatch was probably a good one as well. But this, very likely, because this came out technically before Bandersnatch, is his first foray into acting like an adult. Solid performances. There are a lot of issues with this movie. None of them have to do with acting. The actors in this movie are doing fantastically. The issues with this movie are the writing and the direction and all of those types of things. This is actually two movies, if you really look at it. The first two acts of this movie play out like an English drama. It play out like something you could watch on the BBC. Kind of dry, but well acted. You believe they are these characters. There's a lot, that works very well. If this is just going to be kind of a psychological drama, because the characters have issues, and there's a doctor, and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. If they had continued with that, this would have been a much easier movie to recommend. But they don't, because you get towards the end of Act 2, and they introduce, all of the sudden, it felt like anyway, they introduce a supernatural element, and there's a ghost in this house, and then the grandma kills herself, and then... it's just, and the end of the movie, they try to make it feel like this really artsy, purposeful thing, and there's no explanation for anything. It's just, all of a sudden, there's what appears to be an apparition of a young boy of Domhnall Gleeson's character, the Doctor. It's the actor who plays him as a child in the flashbacks, and it just doesn't, there's no explanation for why all of a sudden this became a horror movie. And I know there's been a trend recently for elevated horror, what they're calling elevated horror, Hereditary and such. This wants to be that, but it falls very, very, very flat. So let's jump into the scores real quick. General score, again, there is not a whole lot wrong with this movie aside from the two very different tones that you get from the first half and the back half. So general score for this is a 70 out of 100. The story score, this is apparently based on a book. I know absolutely nothing about the book. The little bit I looked up on Wikipedia, though, makes it sound like there's a lot of the same stuff there. But just, again, if the story had stayed as a psychological drama, would be totally fine, but it didn't. Then there's this really weird tonal shift. There's this really weird... It didn't land. So we're looking at a 60 out of 100 for the story. Next up is atmosphere. This movie has atmosphere in spades. Even when it does the weird tonal shift, the new atmosphere that it establishes exceedingly quickly, needlessly quickly, is still very, very tangible. So the atmosphere of a dry English drama and the atmosphere of an attempted elevated horror, both of those come across pretty well, though again they really rush the horror side of things. So 80 out of 100 is what we're going for atmosphere. And then enjoyability, I watched this movie technically 3 times, because the first time I fell asleep and the second time I stopped caring. So it kind of gives you an idea about the enjoyability. In order to do this review, otherwise I wouldn't have gone past probably the second watching, because if I fall asleep, then I gotta give it another shot, right? So 65 out of 100 for the enjoyability of this. I wanted to like it. It seemed interesting, but it just drug its feet so hard in the first 2 acts. I cannot in good conscience recommend this movie. And next we're talking about I.O. Netflix got me again. We talked before about the generic Netflix movies and how I'm freaking tired of them. This is a generic sci-fi, post-apocalyptic, almost thriller. There's one section where it gets almost to the level of being a thriller, but it was maybe a 5-minute sequence, maybe, that kind of gets that feeling. Otherwise, it's a moderately well pulled off post-apocalyptic sci-fi movie with a very small cast. There's only 3 that are actually on screen through the whole movie. There's a 4th cast member listed because we do get a voiceover in the form of emails from our main character's fiance, perhaps. It's never really explicitly said what their relationship is, aside from they're more than friends. So maybe it's her boyfriend, maybe it's her fiance, we don't know. But so the basic premise is the world has ended, effectively. There's this weird gas, it's in the zone, is what the main character calls it. The zone is highly toxic, and it will kill people very quickly, and so the surviving members of the human race have exited the planet, with a very small exceptional few, we learn through the course of the movie, have stayed because of Danny Houston's character. A lot of decent handful of people apparently stayed behind, because his theory was that the ozone was going to heal itself, or people were going to adapt or die, is as the saying goes. Which the premise seems to work, but about 20 minutes in, you realize, oh, this is not gonna work. This is just... I don't know the lead actress, Margaret Qualley. This is her first big movie role, but she was in an HBO series that I'm unfamiliar with. And she's done a couple of other smaller things on TV, but again, this is her first big role. And there was nothing about her performance that was enjoyable. Well, I take that back. Whenever she's on screen with somebody else, absolutely nothing about her performance is believable or enjoyable. But there are a few moments where she's by herself, mostly when she's not talking, that are like, this is some decent acting. The best actor in this movie is Danny Houston, who plays her father. And he's only on screen for about 5 minutes maximum. And Anthony Mackie is the other third. He's the third that's on screen. I thought he was a better actor than this, but he has kind of 3 modes in this movie, and they all switch very, very fast. So first he comes in and he's very subdued and pretty quiet, and he's just looking for the doctor, for the scientist. Again, Danny Houston's character, who's dead, we find out very, very quickly. So he learns this, and he seems to take it all right, and then he gets really mad at a certain point, and again, it happens like that, and then all of a sudden, he really cares about Sam, who's our main character, and we don't see why he starts caring for her. They don't establish this, and it seems like he forgot how to emote. There's certain lines in this movie where it looks like he's just reading off of a cue card or a teleprompter. Was disappointed again because I let Netflix dupe me. That being said, let's jump into the scores. General score for this, the potential is so great and it sucks so bad that this is a 60 out of 100 general score. There's very little redeeming about this movie. The premise is really cool, and there could have been a much better story told here, but they didn't do that, so they're getting a 60. As for the story, so very specifically, we can redeem this slightly because we do get those really interesting moments, but you're cherry picking reasons why you would like this movie if you're doing it that way. But so that does bring up the story score a bit, and we're looking at a 65 out of 100. Next up is atmosphere, and this is where this movie excels, much like the movie we just talked about. You get, in those moments where she's alone, in those moments where the character of Sam is alone, you understand the gravity, and then later there's even moments where when Anthony Mackie's with her, there's a lot of gravity there. So the atmosphere, the feeling of this movie is really well done. It's just all of the other bits that aren't very great. So we're looking at an 80 out of 100 for atmosphere. And then enjoyability, this is another one where I could justify, because it's Netflix and because you already have the subscription, it's not costing you anything more to watch this, and you've got a checkbook to balance or something, you need background noise, go for it. Use this movie as background noise. If you want to be thoroughly enjoyed by a movie, you might want to look elsewhere. We're looking at a 70 out of 100 for enjoyability. And that is the end of this week's update, guys. What did I miss? What should we talk about next week or review next week? Let me know in the comments down low. If, though, you want to jump deeper into the conversation with me, then you can do that over on generallynerdy.net. That is the place that you can go find all of the freebies, the social media links, the Nerdy Store. There's the General Store tab across the top at generallynerdy.net. That will take you to the place where you can go order your nerdy swag, get your generallynerdy.net t-shirt. I just put up the "Do You Even Pop Culture, Bro?" shirt, which hopefully you're seeing right about there. So go check all of that stuff out at the General Store over on generallynerdy.net. If this is the first time on Generally Nerdy, then definitely click the subscribe button or the follow button, wherever you're watching right now. If you like the episode, then you can click the like button. If you didn't like the episode, you can let me know that part too. If you are falling behind on your nerd news, though, and you want to catch up, you can also click or tap that box right there to the left of my face to do that. But before we go click on anything or visit any of these other websites, guys, always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.